For more on this story, we can go across to France 24's Nick Holdsworth, standing by. Nick, does this gathering rehabilitate Vladimir Putin in any way?
Exactly, but this is Putin's opportunity to demonstrate, at least to his domestic audience and to some of the non-aligned states who are members of that Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that he still has a big role to play in the world. This is really all about Putin's agenda of opposing what is for a long time now called the unipolar world, i.e. a world where America is the global policeman. Now, obviously, that's something which sits very well with the Chinese, who also want to demonstrate that there is no such thing as a unipolar world, and that the Americans now really have to deal with a counterbalance. And this Russian-Chinese talks, demonstrate that. Now, I mean, obviously, Putin is quite keen to cozy up to the Chinese. He's been saying that he backs Beijing's One China policy. He opposes the provocations by the US in the Taiwan Straits, and values the balanced position that China has taken on Russia's so-called special military operation in Ukraine. Now, of course, the Chinese have been very careful not to support that invasion of Ukraine. They've been very cautious. They don't want to be subject to US sanctions, and they've refrained from supplying weaponry to the Russians. The Russians have had to turn to Iran and North Korea to resupply their much depleted ammunition stock, particularly after this recent Ukrainian offensive. So this is all about the optics, as it generally always is with Vladimir Putin, and we can expect China to continue playing that card that there is no such thing as a unipolar world, agreeing with Putin on that. The Chinese president has just said that China is willing to make efforts with Russia to assume the role of great powers and play a guiding role to inject stability and positive energy into a world rocked by social turmoil. Now, whether he counts what's going on in Ukraine as social turmoil or not remains to be seen. But the Chinese are playing a very careful game to balance their interests against America and mildly for Russia without going too far.
It's interesting to watch what's going on clearly there, because Vladimir Putin is in Samarkand today as Moscow suffers those losses over in Ukraine. And back home in Russia, we're getting to see what is the start, at least, if you will, of signs of dissent emerging.
No, absolutely. I mean, it remains to be seen quite whether the Russian population look askance at the fact that Putin is out of the country just as a Ukrainian counteroffensive has taken more territory than the Russians have managed to gain in nearly 7 months of warfare in Ukraine. And Putin hasn't made any comments whatsoever about that offensive, although that hasn't stopped people in the Russian media beginning to show signs of concern. There have been lots of panel shows where the hosts have shown signs of discomfort. One or two of them have even raised the possibility that this could be named as a war. One of those commentators on a show, looking at footage of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Izium, said, well, why is he able to wander around a city that was in Russian hands without us attacking him with our rockets? So, I mean, these questions are raised. And if you look under the surface at the Russian social media world, it's alive. Right-wing bloggers criticizing Putin for not being assertive enough militarily, and opposition bloggers suggesting that Putin may be on the eve of declaring some kind of partial mobilization as soon as next Monday, although apparently that is fiercely being resisted by elements in the security services who don't really want to have anything to do with it. There are fears that if they begin partial mobilization, you're actually arming potentially disaffected young men who could turn those arms against the state. So there's a lot of queasiness within the elite, apparently, about whether to go for full mobilization or not, because then they would have to call this a war, which they've resisted so far with this this term special military operation.
We'll see how that situation evolves. Nick, thank you very much for that. Nick Holdsworth reporting there.